Tesla's troubles seem to be getting worse. The Elon Musk-led electric car company is seeing steep falls in revenue across Europe.
According to government data, in the last quarter of 2024, 5,097 new Teslas were registered in the province. In the first quarter of 2025, that number was 524, down 90%. Some believe the blame should fall on CEO Elon Musk.
Tesla didn't just stumble in Europe, it vanished. A 90% sales drop. Factories silenced. Elon Musk's empire rejected by the very continent that once embraced him. But here's what they're not saying. This isn't just a European revolt. It's a coordinated replacement strategy. And Tesla isn't part of it. Who orchestrated the downfall? Why are rivals like Renault and BYD devouring Tesla's market? And how much longer before Wall Street follows Europe's lead? Because by the time this video ends, you won't just see the cracks. You'll feel the collapse. What's happening? In late autumn of 2024, Tesla's Swedish sales fell off a cliff. The plunge was not subtle or gradual. It was catastrophic. A 90% drop in year-over-year registrations sent a tremor through European auto analysts and shook Tesla's confidence in one of its most environmentally conscious markets. Sweden had once been a stronghold for Tesla's sleek image and green appeal, but now the numbers told a radically different story. The question wasn't what went wrong, it was how everything fell apart so quickly. But numbers alone never tell the whole story. The shine had worn off. Swedish buyers, educated, tech-savvy, and deeply principled, began seeing Tesla not as a beacon of the future, but as a company dangerously out of sync with the country's values. Complaints surfaced about delays, poor service, and rising insurance costs. The cool factor that had once made Tesla irresistible now felt hollow. Something had broken, and it wasn't just the customer service portal. In early December, a poll conducted by a Stockholm-based mobility think tank revealed a stunning reversal in consumer preference. Only 12% of Swedish EV intenders said they were considering Tesla, compared to over 60% just 18 months earlier. That collapse in sentiment reflected more than price sensitivity. It reflected a cultural fracture. The trigger for that fracture would come into full view in the weeks ahead, when a uniquely Scandinavian labor dispute spilled into international headlines and transformed a sales crisis into a symbolic revolt. And what started with Swedish customers walking away would soon grow into something far larger and far more dangerous for Tesla's European future. Dock workers, postal unions, and a national rebellion. The first escalation came not from consumers, but from dock workers. When Tesla refused to sign Sweden's collective bargaining agreement with IF Metal, the country's largest metalworkers union, it didn't just reject a contract, it rejected a national tradition. In Sweden, collective bargaining is sacred, almost constitutional in practice. For Tesla to operate outside that system was seen as an attack not just on workers, but on the country's social fabric, and Swedish unions did not take it lightly. Dock workers in Gothenburg, one of the busiest ports in Northern Europe, announced they would no longer unload Tesla vehicles. That decision sent ripple effects through the logistics chain, prompting postal workers to declare they would also cease delivering license plates for Tesla customers. In a country where labor solidarity is not a slogan, but a deeply embedded civic mechanism, the entire industrial system began closing ranks. Cleaners, maintenance staff, even janitors at service centers refused to cross the symbolic picket line. This was not about wages, this was about respect. Swedish unions viewed Tesla's refusal not just as arrogance, but as American-style corporatism invading a consensus-driven democracy. By mid-month, 10 separate unions had joined the blockade in solidarity. Each day, headlines in Svenska Dagbladet and Dagens Industri tracked the growing resistance, noting that Tesla's public relations team had gone quiet as pressure mounted. And while Tesla tried to continue operations via workaround strategies, rerouting shipments through non-union ports, outsourcing local services, the backlash only intensified. The public saw these moves as evasive and combative, further eroding trust in a company already slipping out of favor. As international observers began noticing Sweden's coordinated pushback, a deeper story emerged. Tesla's conflict was no longer just operational, it had become philosophical. The rebellion was not against electric cars, it was against the culture of the man who built them. We did the homework. Miles of research and a full tank of coffee. Hit that subscribe button and call it even. Musk's philosophy collides with Scandinavian democracy. By the end of the year, Swedish discourse had shifted from contracts and cars to something much more existential. Elon Musk himself. National op-eds stopped asking whether Tesla would survive the boycott and instead questioned whether Musk's personal ideology was compatible with Swedish society. The answer, increasingly, was no. In Sweden, social responsibility is not a branding exercise. It is a lived expectation. Companies are not just judged by their products, but by how they treat people. Musk's brash refusal to negotiate, his open disdain for unions, and his libertarian view of corporate independence ran counter to everything Scandinavian societies hold sacred. His tweets mocking labor protections and amplifying anti-regulation rhetoric only added fuel to the fire. Tesla's legal arguments that it followed Swedish law and had no obligation to sign collective agreements may have been technically accurate, but culturally, they landed like slaps in the face. Swedish analysts noted that no major company had ever attempted to sidestep union representation so brazenly. To do so was interpreted not as boldness, but as betrayal. Cultural figures began weighing in. Popular Swedish comedians mocked Musk's bravado. Environmental influencers, once fans of Tesla's mission, urged followers to consider locally made EV alternatives from Volvo or Polestar. And when the Swedish Prime Minister made a subtle but clear remark about companies respecting Nordic models of collaboration, the message couldn't have been clearer. The fallout wasn't isolated. The discourse around Musk's values began spilling over into neighboring countries, raising alarms that would soon set off chain reactions across the European Union. Europe starts paying attention. When Danish morning shows began covering Sweden's Tesla standoff with headlines like, "Will we be next?" it became clear the story was no longer confined to Scandinavia. Danish labor federations issued statements of solidarity. German union leaders circulated open letters warning that Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory must not follow the same anti-collective path. In France, op-ed pages speculated about whether the era of unconditional Tesla love was coming to an end. Unlike in the United States, where labor disputes often stay siloed within states or sectors, Europe's cross-border media ecosystem made the Swedish standoff a continental story. Political leaders in Belgium and the Netherlands began referencing it in policy discussions about foreign investment ethics. Even in the United Kingdom, where Tesla's footprint is smaller, transportation commentators took notice. Tesla wasn't just losing a country, it was hemorrhaging trust across a continent. Meanwhile, European consumers, already skeptical of Musk's increasing political entanglements and chaotic online presence, began looking elsewhere. Search trends showed a measurable uptick in interest for Renault's Megane EV, Volkswagen's ID series, and even Chinese models like the BYD Dolphin and Seal. Tesla, once the dominant search and showroom leader, was now slipping behind in both curiosity and confidence. This was not a boycott in the traditional sense. It was worse, a quiet, coordinated reevaluation of Tesla's role in the European project. The continent that had once welcomed Musk's disruption with open arms was now drawing lines, closing ranks, and asking harder questions about what kind of future it wanted and who should be allowed to build it. And that's when the ground began to shift even more dramatically, not just culturally or symbolically, but strategically. Because what followed wasn't just outrage. It was retaliation from the industries, institutions, and governments Tesla thought it had already won over. The Cybertruck meets urban reality. The Cybertruck was supposed to change everything. Again, Elon Musk's promise of an all-electric, ultra-tough, futuristic pickup was met with fanfare in the United States, but in Europe its arrival triggered a very different reaction. Disbelief, confusion, and mockery. The angular armored tank-like design clashed violently with the cobblestone streets, narrow lanes, and centuries-old infrastructure that define many European cities. What was supposed to be a symbol of American dominance quickly turned into a rolling punchline. Auto journalists in France dubbed it a war machine without a war, while critics in Germany asked how a vehicle that could not fit in a standard Berlin parking structure was ever expected to succeed. The problem went beyond aesthetics. Crash test data showed that the Cybertruck's ultra-hard stainless steel construction made it less forgiving in pedestrian collisions, an issue that immediately raised concerns in safety-conscious countries like Sweden and the Netherlands. Compliance with European crash and pedestrian protection standards became a bureaucratic nightmare. In countries like Italy and Denmark, early test vehicles were denied street certification altogether. Critics pointed out the irony. The very strength that Musk bragged about rendered the vehicle unfit for real-world European use. And then came the practical reality. Urban EV buyers in Oslo, Amsterdam, and Milan do not want to drive an oversized armored wedge into tight parking garages or city centers with congestion fees. They want compact, efficient, and beautiful vehicles. Tesla's message, "This is the future," collided with the quiet practicality of European life. And just like that, the Cybertruck became the perfect metaphor for everything going wrong with Tesla's European strategy. Big, bold, and completely out of touch. And as buyers began backing away, competitors wasted no time stepping in to reclaim the lost ground. The EU auto giants smell blood. Volkswagen didn't just see an opportunity, it saw a cultural correction. While Tesla struggled with urban compatibility, resale uncertainty, and a growing image problem, Volkswagen launched a series of targeted campaigns, emphasizing everything Tesla had abandoned: European craftsmanship, strong worker protections, localized production, and shared social values. Built in Wolfsburg, not in Texas. One slogan read, and it worked. In France, Renault's Zoe and Megane EV models suddenly became the go-to choice for middle-class families who wanted eco-friendly vehicles without the geopolitical baggage. Volvo leaned into safety, stability, and quiet design refinement, offering an implicit contrast to Tesla's noisy, chaotic brand image. Stellantis pushed affordability and supply reliability, reminding buyers that they did not need to wait 6 months for service or rely on mobile technicians. These brands weren't just competing on price or specs, they were offering identity alignment. A Tesla buyer in Berlin now had to ask themselves, am I buying a car or buying into Musk? For many, that answer became too uncomfortable. The switch wasn't just symbolic. Market share data began shifting month over month. Volkswagen's EV sales in the Netherlands surged. Renault reported year-on-year growth in Scandinavian markets. Volvo reclaimed lost ground in urban commuter segments. In countries where Tesla once led among electric options, it fell to third or fourth position. Dealers were quick to promote the alternatives. Trade in your Tesla. Upgrade to peace of mind, read one dealership's banner in southern Germany. And as consumers changed direction, so too did the governments that once enabled Tesla's rise. Policy, perks, and charging stations get pulled. Tesla's European expansion was never just a matter of consumer demand. It had relied heavily on political favor, fast-tracked regulations, infrastructure partnerships, and green incentives. But when political winds change in Europe, they change quickly, and they cut deep. In late autumn, Belgium suspended tax rebates for imported EVs that failed to meet local labor criteria. Tesla was the only major brand to lose eligibility overnight. Germany followed by slashing charging infrastructure funding for companies that do not participate in union-backed agreements. In both cases, the message was clear: build here, partner with workers, or lose access. Even at the municipal level, the shift was visible. Cities like Brussels, Vienna, and Copenhagen began denying Tesla special charging privileges. In some places, Tesla superchargers were excluded from newly funded charging grants. Municipal fleets quietly dropped Tesla from purchasing lists. In Norway, government procurement databases showed a sudden drop-off in Tesla orders. And in France, a proposal circulated in Parliament to restrict subsidies for companies engaged in antisocial labor practices. It wasn't just policy punishment, it was institutional alignment with public values. Europe has long tied its industrial incentives to social cohesion. Tesla's refusal to negotiate with unions, Musk's public provocations, and the company's pattern of compliance avoidance no longer made it a partner governments could promote. Suddenly, being seen helping Tesla was a political liability. The unraveling of these perks didn't kill Tesla in Europe, but it ensured that the company would have to fight harder for every inch of ground. No more shortcuts, no more special access, no more blind admiration. And behind closed doors, Tesla executives were beginning to panic, because what came next wasn't just market pushback, it was financial instability. Internal financial chaos spreads. The alarm bells weren't sounding from outside Europe, they were echoing from inside Tesla's own walls. By the start of the year 2025, the company's Berlin Gigafactory had become a black hole for operating costs. Initially envisioned as Tesla's gateway to conquering the European Union's electric vehicle market, the facility instead revealed itself as a logistical disaster. Production output failed to meet internal projections for 6 straight months. Equipment delays, labor disputes, and supply chain inconsistencies kept critical assembly lines idling. The longer the underperformance dragged on, the more expensive the facility became to maintain. Compounding the operational inefficiencies was a painful currency dynamic. With the euro weakening against the dollar, Tesla's expenses in Europe soared, while its revenue in local currencies shrank. Every car sold in Germany now brought back fewer dollars to Tesla's California headquarters, while the costs to produce those same vehicles inflated across payroll, raw materials, and energy. The pressure this currency mismatch put on Tesla's margins triggered an internal accounting crisis. Cost-saving initiatives were drafted, scrapped, rewritten, then leaked to the press. Teams in Palo Alto were instructed to freeze non-essential R&D hiring, while executives in Berlin debated layoffs and shift reductions. Behind closed doors, senior finance leaders warned of a burn rate spiral, a situation in which losses from operational drag outpaced cash flow growth from any other region. With China tightening and the United States nearing saturation, Europe had been counted on to offset revenue softness elsewhere. But now, rather than serving as Tesla's financial stabilizer, the Berlin operation was tilting the company closer to imbalance. And in the boardroom, the numbers no longer inspired confidence. They inspired panic. But Tesla's response to this brewing disaster was not introspection. It was image repair, and that began with a campaign too shiny for its own good. That product, it turned out, already existed on paper, but it was not yet real. Musk's secret plan for a Eurocentric EV. Whispers began in early February. At first, it was just a rumor. Tesla was designing a city-focused, low-cost electric vehicle tailored for Europe's urban drivers. It would be small, elegant, nimble, and most importantly, affordable. Leaked images suggested something radically different from the Cybertruck or Model Y. Compact wheelbase, minimalist styling, modular software features. Internally referred to as Project Baltic, the new vehicle would slot below the Model 3, offering a sub-€30,000 price point, and targeted primarily at France, Italy, and the Netherlands. From a strategic standpoint, the idea made sense. European cities are dense. Urban planning discourages oversized vehicles, and incentives disproportionately favor entry-level EVs over luxury imports. Volkswagen had already found massive success with its ID.3 hatchback, while Renault's Megane E-Tech was climbing sales charts rapidly. If Tesla could create a vehicle that truly felt European in its dimensions, styling, and cost, it might claw back relevance. But that was the problem. It was only an if. Despite mounting leaks and shareholder pressure, Tesla offered no clear production timeline, prototype date, or even an official name for the model. Berlin was reportedly not yet equipped to build compact platforms. There was talk of importing manufacturing from Mexico or China, which only raised more red flags about whether the vehicle would truly be for Europe. Investors began to whisper about vaporware. Concepts floated to calm panic without actual deliverables behind them. The sense of urgency didn't match the available roadmap. Tesla didn't need to launch this car in 2 years. It needed to launch it yesterday. And as markets waited for a tangible sign of progress, they grew tired of waiting. Confidence, already shaken by weak sales and failed branding, now began to erode from within the financial world. And that shift would prove even harder to reverse. Investors began quietly fleeing. The institutional money didn't run in a stampede. It slipped away in silence. At first, the signs were subtle. A Belgian pension fund quietly trimmed its Tesla holdings by 15%. A French green tech ETF rebalanced towards Stellantis and Renault. London-based mutual funds adjusted their forecasts downward, citing volatility in the European segment. But when Zurich's largest asset manager announced a full divestment from Tesla on environmental governance grounds, the dam finally cracked. None of this was coordinated, but the effect was cumulative. Within weeks, Tesla's name dropped off the top holdings list for several key European ESG funds. The same investor class that once touted Tesla as the crown jewel of the clean energy transition now saw it as an exposure risk, too erratic in leadership, too unpredictable in brand stability, and too vulnerable to both regulatory and cultural backlash. Sell-side analysts noticed the pattern. One described the European exit as death by 10,000 reallocations. Another, in a British financial paper, called Tesla a growth stock with no goodwill left in Europe. Stockholders started asking difficult questions during earnings calls. What is the long-term plan for Berlin? Why is Model Y demand cratering? Where is the compact EV? When does the bleeding stop? Behind these questions was something more dangerous than panic. It was a quiet loss of faith. And once faith evaporates in financial markets, it rarely returns. Yet, while investors retreated, something even larger was forming on the horizon. It was no longer just about Tesla losing Europe. It was about Tesla being replaced. And the players doing the replacing were not just traditional rivals. They were global powerhouses with bigger plans. China and France devour Tesla's market. Tesla's disappearance from the European conversation created a vacuum. And in geopolitics, vacuums do not last long. While Elon Musk focused on crisis control in Sweden and Germany, two forces quietly moved in to finish the job. One came from across the globe. The other was right next door. In France, Renault's strategy was sharp, fast, and unapologetically local. They rolled out the new Megane E-Tech Electric with a marketing blitz that emphasized European values, sustainability, affordability, and union-built manufacturing. Unlike Tesla's image of sleek futurism paired with ideological chaos, Renault positioned itself as the stable choice for the everyday European. French buyers responded immediately. Renault EV registrations jumped by double digits, and the brand expanded incentives in Spain and Belgium with near-perfect timing. Meanwhile, China's BYD and NIO took a different approach: precision saturation. BYD launched multiple EV models in the 30,000 to 40,000 euro range, undercutting Tesla on price while offering robust build quality and localized tech support. In Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands, where Tesla once led the charge, BYD began placing dealerships near urban hubs, touting fast delivery and aggressive service guarantees. By the time Tesla responded, it was too late. In the space of 9 months, BYD had gained more new market share than Tesla had lost in the entire Nordic region. Musk's company found itself squeezed from both sides, boxed in by Renault's regional loyalty and BYD's global ambition. Tesla wasn't just losing customers, it was being replaced, rebranded, and forgotten. But even worse than consumer rejection was the institutional one waiting just ahead. Regulators and journalists closed the door. What began as a public perception problem rapidly turned into something far more damaging: legal scrutiny and regulatory freeze-out. In Brussels, the European Commission opened an inquiry into Tesla's labor practices and transparency standards, citing discrepancies between public statements and internal conduct. The decision to investigate did not come from media pressure. It came from within the European political class, many of whom had once courted Tesla as a clean energy icon. The Commission's preliminary findings noted potential violations of regional worker protections, inconsistencies in gigafactory wage disclosures, and troubling reports from local unions about anti-organizing behavior. For years, Tesla had relied on its tech sector mystique to stay ahead of regulatory scrutiny. But in Europe, that protection no longer applied. Once the Swedish labor standoff revealed how Tesla operated outside traditional collective bargaining frameworks, other countries began asking whether the brand truly aligned with their national principles. Then came the journalists. Der Spiegel, Le Monde, and El País ran coordinated exposés detailing Tesla's dismissals of whistleblowers, safety complaints in German plants, and Musk's public political entanglements. Coverage was not just critical, it was cultural. Tesla, once embraced as the spearhead of Europe's EV future, was now recast as an outsider with authoritarian overtones and disregard for democratic norms. Media narratives sharpened. This was not just an American company. It was an American company unwilling to follow European rules. Tesla's invitations to policy summits stopped arriving. Ministers stopped referencing Musk in climate speeches. In just over a year, the company went from symbol of energy transformation to persona non grata across the continent. But the final blow wasn't political. It was quiet, and it came from the public. The European market moves on. Without Tesla, electric vehicle adoption across Europe didn't stall after Tesla's collapse. It accelerated. New charging stations appeared in Romanian suburbs, Belgian rest stops, and Portuguese coastal towns. Fleets transitioned to electric in Dublin and Warsaw. From Sweden to Sicily, Europe kept going. Without Elon Musk, consumers no longer asked, "Is Tesla better?" They asked, "What fits my life?" And increasingly, the answer came in local form. In Denmark, Volvo's compact electric SUVs outsold Tesla's Model Y for 4 straight quarters. In Italy, Fiat offered small EVs tailored for ancient city streets. In the Netherlands, even Volkswagen's ID series bounced back, not because of radical innovation, but because it felt built for Europe, not for Silicon Valley dreams. Public charging infrastructure, once closely aligned with Tesla's proprietary networks, shifted strategy. New tenders in Germany, France, and Austria prioritized open-access designs and regionally manufactured hardware. Tesla's once loyal supercharger advantage diminished as governments shifted toward platform neutrality. It was no longer about whose plug charged faster. It was about who followed the rules. Perhaps the most telling sign was cultural. In ads, Tesla disappeared. In showrooms, its cars gathered dust. Consumers, once thrilled by Tesla's sci-fi edge, now spoke of it the way they talked about old tech. Disruptive, yes, but no longer essential. And just as European drivers moved on without regret, a quieter reflection began inside the institutions that had once embraced the brand, the company that could have led it all. There was a time, not long ago, when European leaders imagined Tesla as the tip of the green revolution's spear. They opened their borders to its factories. They gave subsidies for its sales. They held up Musk as proof that industry and climate could coexist. That time is gone. Tesla's retreat from Europe was not declared in press releases or Twitter posts. It happened by inertia, by silence, by irrelevance. The Berlin Gigafactory scaled back production. Hiring slowed. Expansion plans evaporated. In European Parliament sessions, the company's name was mentioned less and less, then not at all. It had not been defeated in a single policy vote or crushed by a rival lawsuit. It had simply failed to meet the moment. In the end, the downfall wasn't about sales charts or broken batteries. It was about trust. Europe had asked for a partner in climate. Tesla had offered a spectacle of innovation, ego, and confrontation. What the continent needed was humility, cooperation, and reliability. It needed a car company, not a personality cult. Renault will not change the world. BYD will not command headlines the way Musk once did. But they are still here, listening, building, responding. And that is what Europe rewarded. Tesla, the company that could have led it all, now stands as a monument to missed opportunity. Not because its cars stopped working, but because it stopped listening to the people who once believed in them. That's the story Europe's not just writing, but finishing without Tesla. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below. What shocked you most? Was it the labor rebellion, the Cybertruck flop, or the quiet collapse on Wall Street? If this video earned your respect, give it a like. If we told you something no one else did, subscribe. You know where the truth lives now.